What is up, everybody? Special crossover edition. Locked on Bulldogs, locked on Eagles. I'm
It's the
Daniel.
same
That's
team.
Clint, and that's Louie from Locked On Eagles down there. Louie, how are you today? It's a great day to be an Eagles fan, and it's a great day to be a Georgia fan,
Yeah,
and that's been true for a while now for both these teams.
for sure. And I think they have a very healthy relationship right now, helping each other out. And there's been jokes over Twitter throughout the last few days that you might as well call them the Philadelphia Bulldogs. You draft Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean last year. This year it's Jalen Carter, it's Nolan Smith, it's Kelly Ringo, it's even DeAndre Swift. It's awesome. Chip Kelly was with the Oregon Ducks, and then when he came to the Eagles, he brought in a lot of Ducks. There were some, Philadelphia Ducks jokes. They're redoing it, but I like this strategy with Georgia a whole lot more.
Yeah, you're getting a better product
You're getting,
in
yes, a lot
Georgia
better.
than you were with either Chip Kelly or the Oregon Ducks. But I'm sure I don't
Right.
have to convince you of that.
Nope.
All right, let's jump in. We got a lot of Dogs fans watching the show. We got a lot of Eagles fans watching the show. And so let's talk from an Eagles perspective. In your opinion, what do you think the organization sees in what Kirby is doing? Because obviously this is beyond coincidence at this point. It's not just that the best player available just so happened to be from Georgia. There's clearly something that the general manager, the head coach that they see from Kirby Smart. What do you speculate that is, besides just winning and talented players, maybe beyond that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to it, right? I do truly think that Jalen Carter was the best player available. I think Nolan Smith was absolutely the best player available at 30. Kelly Ringo in the fourth round, I thought he should be a second round selection. So BPA was definitely a part of it. They are playing premier positions, right? Pass rushers, corners, positions that Howie Roseman really prioritizes for this Eagles team. That's how he's been building a contender year after year. So that goes into it. And I also think the culture does too. I think he likes to have this locker room tight. I think he likes the chemistry and the maturity of a lot of these Georgia players that won championships together, right? So that cohesive unit is something that since 2020, when the culture was not great, has been very important to this team. They had an amazing culture last year, a very close group of guys. They've been drafting a lot of Alabama players that play together too, like Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith. And it's not just the college teammates thing too. Like Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown were best friends before college. So I think it's really about culture. It's about the positions these guys play, the winning. There's so much to it. And no, it's not a coincidence at all. And I don't think he's overdoing it either. These guys are studs, and it's worth the risk even on a guy like Carter. So I'm really happy with the strategy he's taking.
Yeah, you said risk with Carter. I saw an interview today with Kelsey talking about how he interacted with Jalen before the draft and even on draft day. And he talked about he had seen other guys come in, be professional with this. So you guys say risk. Georgia fans know that Jalen Carter is one of the best, most respected players at UGA. There was an unfortunate incident where kids were celebrating. But on UGA's campus and coaching staff, that rumor of coaching staff belittling him is just bunk from whoever put that out there. We know word on the street. Jalen is
His name's Todd McShay. We could just say his name.
Well, I didn't want to give him any more credit.
Is Todd McShay. Yeah.
That's comforting to hear, guys, because I thought he was the most talented player in this draft if you remove position.
He
absolutely
is,
best defensive player in the draft, most talented overall player in the draft, and can't believe he was sitting there at 9 for y'all.
And the thing is, too, you lose Javon Hargrave, who's an elite pass rushing interior defensive lineman. He signs a $20+ million a year contract with San Francisco. So Jalen Carter comes in. He has the potential. Is he going to be Hargrave right away? Probably not. But in this deep rotation, I think he's going to make an instant impact. So it's great to hear that, because I think a lot of Eagles fans are like, okay, the risk was worth it because of the talent, but there are some nerves. But I think that'll definitely comfort a lot of fans. And again, the culture, it's hard to mess up with how many guys hold each other accountable with this team.
That's right.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because it sounded like Kelsey basically said, we have the culture in the team that could withstand a risk. No, he's not. It's just like last year, Nakobe Dean's risk was injury. There was no injury. He got in and played
He was
right
healthy
away.
the entire year, guys.
The entire year. That's what we have been saying, and that was the rumor. So if you apply the same thing to Jalen, it's just rumored of character. And Kelsey said this. So the Eagles are this tight-knit organization. How did that – you said after the 2020 season, or when did that start taking place?
Yeah, because, and I think Doug Peterson, when they won the Super Bowl, he was a player's coach. I think they had a great culture, but after Nick Foles and the Carson Wentz stuff started to happen, the injuries to pretty much everybody on the roster, the bad drafts, just a faulty process. Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson had issues. There was tension there. I think the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, was too involved, so there was some mistrust at the top. And then there were a lot of, you'd see it each year, anonymous sources were talking bad about Carson Wentz. They were talking bad about the GM. It just felt like there was a lot of, I don't know, from 2018 to 2020, just didn't feel like everybody was on the same page. And now it feels like that, not just from the veterans like, Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, guys that have done it before, but the young players are culture setters too. Jalen Hurts, obviously, Devontae Smith, Jordan Davis, and Nakobe Dean. These are guys that, again, just they're 24 years old, but you think they're 34. And that showed last year when they made the Super Bowl. So I think it was important for them to get back to being a tight-knit locker room that we're all on the same page. And that's why I think this Georgia strategy continues to enhance that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got a lot more that we're going to get to with Louie. We're going to talk Eagles. We're going to talk Bulldogs. I'm going to ask him to rank the 5 Georgia players that have been drafted over the last year. So we got lots more to talk about. First, Clint is going to tell you about this.
Built Bar is the tastiest protein bar on planet Earth. Daniel, did you know that?
No, I know that. I mean,
okay, good.
Louis knows that. I know that. I think
Louis
we all
knows
pretty
that.
much
We all know that.
The peanut butter one, I can't stop with them.
Just
okay. Louis is
why
hooked.
would you stop?
Can't stop. Won't stop. Don't want to stop. Peanut butter puff right there. Seasonal flavor. BuiltBar.com. The tastiest protein bar on planet Earth. They taste like a candy bar. High in protein, high in fiber, low in sugar. They are dietary restriction approved. They do keto, paleo. I don't know. Sure, let's throw it on there. But whatever you're doing, they will fit within it. You can do pre-workout, post-workout, during workout. Don't be that person that leaves it on the bench as you leave your sweaty mess. Don't do that because Built Bar doesn't deserve that. They're better than that. They're the best protein bar on planet Earth. And right now, you get 15% off your entire order. Built.com. Use the promo code Locked On. 15% off your entire order. Built Bar, the tastiest protein bar on planet Earth.
All right, Louis, I teased it coming out, going into the break, but I'm curious. I think Georgia fans are curious because we've seen what these guys have done, and we've got, all 5 of these guys, and again, it's Jordan Davis, it's Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, all 5 of these guys, championship winning players, all really significant players in Georgia football history. I know all Georgia fans would have their 1 to 5. I'm curious from your perspective, let's go who you are most excited to have on this team, even just from a long-term perspective, not instant impact necessarily, but looking down the road, which of these players excite you the most?
Yeah, see, I like the long-term perspective because I think this year, Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean probably make the biggest impact. They have the most opportunity to be starters, right?
Yeah.
And by starters, I mean they're going to play more snaps.
And experience. Yeah.
Right,
they
exactly.
Obviously, yeah.
So I think long-term, though, it's got to be Jalen Carter. Again, he is a player. Jordan Davis, I think, can take those next steps as a pass rusher. He has all the athleticism to do it. But Jalen Carter is there already with that style. And so I think he's a guy that can be, not saying he's going to be Aaron Donald, but he could be prime Fletcher Cox, one of the top 3 pass rushing interior linemen in the league for a decade plus. When you look at the combination of size and speed, it's just incredible. And you can line him up at so many different spots. So to me, number 1 is Jalen Carter because of the upside. I just love the upside there. Number 2, I would say Nolan Smith probably. And you look at Hassan Reddick last year, should have been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Nolan Smith reminds me a lot of Hassan Reddick, and I think he's better against the run. So I love, for me, athleticism, speed, and upside are themes that I always look for in these prospects, even if they are a little riskier in other areas. So I think, honestly, the 2 first-round picks this year are the guys that I'm most excited for. And then, obviously, I think, though, you look at what Nakobe Dean could do as the field general. TJ Edwards and Kazir White were really good last year, probably the best linebacker play the Eagles have had in quite some time. That's why Dean was basically redshirted. But Dean, to me, has star power, and flowing off these guys up in front that he's played with before, I think Nakobe Dean's going to be a complete stud. So I would say those are my top 3.
Those are
I don't
good
hate that
three.
top three at all. I don't hate that at all, Clint.
And I love
you
Kelly
got two
Ringo,
guys.
though, too, guys. I mean, like,
Yeah.
this is a
Look, I was just
4-3
gonna
speed
ask you.
player. Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask you, Eagles fan wise, and coming out of the organization, there was a lot of rumor of safety switch for Keely because Keely's got that body size that is coveted.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you guys. Do you think he's a corner or a safety? Because I think the Eagles are going to use him as a corner more and develop behind Slay and Bradbury.
I absolutely think he's a corner.
That's where he should stay.
He's got the physicality to move to safety if you need him to.
Yeah.
And he certainly has ball skills to, play safety. Like he's a big play corner waiting to happen. And he's obviously has size, he obviously has speed, he obviously has athleticism. And so he's a ball hawk. He loves the ball and he goes for the ball. And so do I think he could play in the middle? Yeah, I do. But I like him at corner, and I think if the Eagles are going to use him at corner, I mean, as a Georgia fan, that's all we've ever seen him. He's never he came in day one, played corner. There was never even a hint that he was going to move out to
safety.
He
didn't even slide down into the slot to play the star position. He
Are
was
there,
always
like,
on the outside.
No.
Are there weaknesses in his game that make people think he translates to safety more? And I know maybe it's like the mirroring of receivers and man, but what is it about Ringo, like maybe from a negative side, that makes people want to switch him? Because like you said, he's only been a corner. So what makes people say safety?
Well, Louis, you see my co-host is backing off the mic because I'm about to just throw flame onto my microphone. Yeah, Keely Ringo infuriated me last year. The ceiling for him is otherworldly. The traits, the speed, the size, the athleticism.
Which is what I got.
Sometimes he just got bored on the outside and he got mismanaged and mysteriously was lost in coverage at times. So it didn't matter if it was zone or man. The schematics wasn't really there. It was more, and you saw this from Kirby. Kirby on the sidelines would give him this eye, and he actually on a number of occasions pulled him off the field to get basically we need to have a come to Jesus moment right now, man. Like we need to talk about this. So he does. His floor is admittedly low. It's not high. His ceiling though is otherworldly if he puts it all together. So the coaching and the DB coaching is going to be crucial in his development as a star corner in this league.
And again, the good news is this guy does not have to come in right away and be a starter. They have James Bradbury and Darius Slay both signed extensions this offseason. Avonte Maddox in the slot's one of the better slot corners in the game, so he can sit behind those three guys and learn. And so I think in the fourth round, so maybe from what you're saying, the first or second round is too rich, but I'll give up a 2024 third-round pick, which is what they did to move up for him. And you're going to get that pick back with the compensatory pick formula with Hargrave leaving. So I'm in on that. And guys, I had a question for you. You had me rank the players I'm most excited for with this Georgia team, and I said the top three for me: Carter, Smith, and Dean. For you, when you look back at 2021, which is the year where they at least were all together to a certain degree, of these players the Eagles drafted, like are these the guys from that defense? Because there's been a lot of Bulldogs over the last few years that have been starting. Like the defensive line I'm most curious about, because it's not just these two. You've seen, Trayvon Walker, of course, and the Packers defensive tackle from last year.
Devontae
Wyatt, too. Who were the best from that unit? Was it Carter or was it one of those guys?
2021, Jalen Carter was the best defensive player that Georgia had.
Which is incredible. Because
then in 2022, Jalen Carter was the best defensive player that college football had. So that has been his progression. He was the best defensive lineman on a defensive line that had 3 players drafted in the first round that weren't him. So Devontae Wyatt, as you mentioned, obviously Trayvon Walker, the number 1 overall pick, and Jordan Davis to your Eagles. And Jalen Carter was the best guy on that line. And then this year, the Georgia defensive line, I mean, I don't know how much college football you watch, but Georgia lost a lot of players, 15 players drafted in the 2021 draft, and so 2022 draft, I should say. And so it's a lot of talent, 5 defensive first rounders, plus guys like Nakobe Dean, who go later than that. But the defensive line was no slouch this year. There's a lot of young talent, a lot of talent on the edge, but it was still Jalen Carter's team, and he was the guy, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then I would say if you're ranking players on that 2021 defense, T2 are the other two guys that you named. It's Jordan Davis and it's Nakobe Dean. Honest to goodness. And that's including Trayvon, and it's including it's including Devontae, it's including the other two linebackers, Quay Walker, Lewis Seen.
Yeah, I forgot about Lewis Seen, right? Another first-round pick.
Yeah, Quay Walker, Channing Tendall, both of which are, in the NFL right now.
Walker was a first too. That might honestly
defense.
be is it arguable that they're one of the best college defenses ever, if not the best?
It's not arguable.
It's the single best defense. As a matter of fact, 13 players on that defense were drafted off that defense. It's absolutely insane. And it's just going to continue. The trenches for Georgia is where you go for talent. And you're right. Jalen Carter, talented. For me, I started watching Eagles just because y'all took Dean. Nakobe Dean, to me, was the voice and the leader. And what's great to hear about the Eagles is that they have leadership. But whenever that older leadership starts going, either free agent or retiring, Nakobe Dean is the guy he is the alpha in whatever room he comes into, and he will demand respect out of everyone that's there. So for me, talent-wise, Jalen is the most talented player we have seen at Georgia, Daniel, in 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of an instant impact guy that as soon as he takes the field, I think you mentioned it, like that elite pass rusher trait that I would never say Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis, freakishly big and strong, just as by the grace of God, and then freakishly athletic, like for his size. Just does things that a person of that size cannot and should not do. But Jordan Davis really is your prototypical, let me take two offensive linemen, let me take a center and a guard, and let me just drive them backwards so that Nakobe Dean can go eat, like in the backfield. Jalen Carter is not that guy. He is the let me take my right hand and put it in the guard's ear hole and then be on top of the quarterback. Like that's who Jalen Carter is. And you watch some tape from last year, and it's almost like he's a halfback. He's in the backfield before the snap. At times. That's
the most
freakish.
Exciting part is I think each one of these guys fills different roles. I mean, Jordan Davis, as you said, is the space eater that I think, by the way, can take the Vita Vea or Dexter Lawrence type of steps as a pass rusher. Is he going to be a 10-plus sack a year guy? No. But I think he'll be much more effective in that way than he was last year. And so you have the typical nose space eater. You've got the leaders you mentioned with Nakobe Dean, and then you just have the athletes, the pass rushers. Just go get the quarterback, pin your ears back and go get him. Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. And guys, for Nolan Smith too, I know the size was a concern, but I saw from PFF that he was like the number 1 rated run defender on the edge of day 1 picks.
There it is. You said earlier,
exciting.
Louis, you nailed it. When you said he was actually a better run defender than people give. We said every single time we had a backup, Chaz Chambliss, who came in when he got hurt, and we were uncertain of that edge being set. But when Nolan was in there, you did not run to his side. That edge was set and it was bottled up in entirety. So whoever you've had on the Eagles before, he is that replica coming in and has that free shoulder, is going to jam a tackler tight end, has that free shoulder to tackle, and no one's getting outside of him because then all of a sudden, oh, wait a second, record 40 speed for a guy at his position. So yes, his run defense is.
It's a great example, I think, of NFL GMs just over analyzing themselves to death. You look at you just look pulling up height and weight and body mass and all of these things instead of just cutting on the tape and looking at him play against NFL left tackles and right tackles.
Yeah.
NFL caliber players, NFL caliber backs, and seeing the way that he puts his body in there, sheds blocks and makes tackles. It's the 40 time was everybody's wow moment for Nolan Smith at the combine. He obviously, set the world on fire when he came out and ran that, 4.3. But
and a 40-inch vertical too, by the way.
Yeah, but that's not who Nolan Smith is a leader and is like a glue guy on a team, and B is a physical presence on the defensive front. He is better at stopping the run and playing physical in the trenches than he is at getting after the passer. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think he's got room to make some noise as a pass rusher in the NFL, but the concerns about him against the run are ridiculous.
And this is why, again, I get the strategy. And if you're going over the top and just taking a player because you went to a certain school, I think that can be misguided because there's busts in every school, right? Alabama, Georgia, LSU. And so, I think to a degree you have to use context with each pick. But I think Howie Roseman is doing that. He's picking them because of the leaders they are, because of the athleticism and the premier positions they play. But at the same time, I think it's smart to just say, this was maybe the best college defense of all time. I'm going to take the best players from that defense. Because he used to, when he had bad drafts, he was taking Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. He was almost trying to outsmart the league too much. Like, oh, you're going to take the LSU kid? I'm going to take the small school guy and the speedster here that you didn't think the rest of the league wouldn't have took. And I know he wants to zig when the rest of the league is zagging, but sometimes doing the simple things like taking Georgia players is also smart, and that's what he did with Bama players too. It's why Devontae Smith's a stud and Landon Dickerson. So I love the strategy, and I'm glad he went even further with it this year, and he traded for DeAndre Swift, who I'm really excited about too.
Yeah. Now
that's what we need to talk about in segment 3. I was just going to say DeAndre Swift in segment 3. That's where we need to go. But yeah, I love that. Obviously, taking Georgia players, taking Alabama players, taking Oklahoma players like Jalen Hurts, and so you got lots of talent from lots of good schools on that team. I'm sorry, did you see that? Just snuck that in. We'll be right back. We've got a little bit more coming up on this crossover Eagles Bulldogs episode right after this. All right, Louis, let's talk about something that isn't the draft, but that happened just right on top of the draft. I mean, right in. It must have been a pretty busy week for you.
In the best way possible.
In the best of all ways. DeAndre Swift comes over from the Detroit Lions. Number one, Georgia fans know and love DeAndre. Give us your take on this move, and how do you think he fits into what the Eagles are trying to do?
I absolutely love it, and because for me, I think the Eagles are taking the right approach at running back. They're saying, I'm going to pay DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny a combined $3 million, right? And so Miles Sanders was a really good player for them last year, over 1,200 yards, but Carolina paid him $13 million guaranteed. DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, sure, do they have a little bit of an injury history? For sure. But again, $3 million, you look at these two guys. Swift had 5.5 yards per carry last year. Penny was at 6.3. To me, this is the right approach. Maybe he's not as good as Bijan Robinson if we traded up for him, or maybe they're not going to be individually as good as Miles Sanders, but combined, their production is going to be very similar, and you're paying a whole lot less. And DeAndre Swift, it's not just the explosiveness and the efficiency in the run game, but he's the most complete receiving back that the Eagles have had since Miles Sanders did it really well as a rookie in 2019, but since then he hasn't really caught the ball. It's probably going back to LaShawn McCoy. So I think just when you look at the value combined with the efficiency, and then if he leaves in free agency next year, you get a comp pick. I just think this is the right strategy to take it running back. And not only is he a former Georgia Bulldog, but he went to high school in Philadelphia. So he's a local kid too. So it's a fun story.
That's exactly right. Local kid. Going to come back. And yeah, he was oft injured in Detroit, wasn't really utilized. And so that's maybe the question that I have for you with Philadelphia's running attack is what type of running style does Philadelphia run the most, especially with Jalen knowing that he has mobility as well?
Well, what and new coordinator. So do you even know? Because obviously with all the coaching changes.
So Brian Johnson, their new OC, was with the team last year as the quarterback's coach. I don't think it'll be very different. They're still going to run mostly from the shotgun. They love to run the option with Jalen Hurts, a lot of RPO, some zone run schemes too. They like to get their athletic offensive linemen upfield. And so I think DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Kenneth Gainwell, all these guys fit in very well. They want athletes, but they also want guys that I think make the right decisions because this offensive line is so good when it comes to run blocking, and it's so easy next to Jalen Hurts to, clear up more space, that they want good decision makers too. And I think Swift and Penny, while they have the explosiveness of Miles Sanders, I think they're a little more decisive as runners. So I think that helps them out as well. So again, it's a little riskier with this injury history, but I think two quote unquote injury prone running backs combined will probably get you 17 games next year. And if not, you've got Gainwell and Scott in the backfield too. So Swift was a really exciting move. And the fact that you only gave up a 4 and then you swapped 7ths is awesome to me. So I couldn't believe he was available, but the Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, and that was one of the shockers of the draft. So that made him available.
Yeah, absolutely. The Lions clearly had their eye on something else. The famed Georgia Tech running back Jahmyr Gibbs.
I had no idea what Detroit was doing on day one with that and the linebacker pick from Iowa. It was it's a very 1980s-esque NFL draft class.
Listen, you're on.
Have
this
you seen
podcast,
the head coach,
Louis?
Yeah, right.
You're on this podcast, maybe unbeknownst to you, it's with a lot of Georgia fans who also have the misfortune of being Falcons fans, and so please don't speak about people who screw up drafts in front of Falcons fans, because
I think Bijan Robinson is going to be really, really good for Atlanta. But again, to take him at 8 overall over somebody like Jalen Carter, to me, is
when
nuts
you had the number 1 rushing attack in the NFL last year.
And again,
with
you can match that exactly with a rookie 5th-round pick. That's what I'm saying. You can match the production of a Bijan Robinson by like 80% and spend so much less draft capital and money. So, those guys normally in the first round end up being pretty good, but it's never normally worth it when you talk about how they age, the value and the impact they make in the game, and how replaceable it is. So I think the Eagles had the right strategy. They got the Georgia kid. I think Atlanta, the team in that state, probably should have took him.
Yeah. Absolutely, they should have taken him, and there's a lot of fans listening to this podcast that will regret. And then there's a lot of people like me that don't really have an NFL team to cheer for, and so I'm going to be jumping on that Eagles bandwagon. We're winning
where's
the
the
Super
Eagles
Bowl
backers
this year.
bar going to be in Georgia?
Let's go.
There.
We're coming. We're
Somebody build it.
Set up shop in Athens, and we'll be watching all the Eagles games. Louis, it's been a lot of fun. We could sit here and talk all night. You got anything else for us before we get out of here?
Honestly, I'm so excited about this defense. Last year I thought the Eagles roster was the best I've ever seen. And this year I think it could be just as good. And a lot of it has to do with the upside of all these Georgia prospects. So appreciate your guys' insight. You got, I think, a lot of our Eagles listeners excited too, especially with the Carter concerns. Doesn't sound like there's as many maybe as people think. And there's a lot of potential with this group. And so hopefully the confetti will fall in green just like it fell in red. So appreciate you guys having me on.
Hey, listen, we'd love to see it. We can't wait to talk to you next year when you draft Brock Bowers and Jamon Dumas-Johnson. So we'll see.
We didn't take a tight end this year. We might need one behind Dallas Goedert.
Oh,
listen, you mean in front of
Dallas Goedert?
But
I was going to say, he's going to be gone.
All
right. For Louis DiBiase and Clint Shamblin, I'm Daniel, and this has been Locked On Bulldogs, Locked On Eagles, and we will see you guys tomorrow.